Welcome back to VBuzz. My name is Alvin Sinclair, and we got Swarna right here. And we speak to representatives from Malaysian NGOs, foundations, and social enterprises on a weekly basis. And funding is always the biggest issue they face. As the economy takes hits, corporations tighten their belts, and we see the impact on the people as unemployment rates rise. This vicious cycle creates a dire need for the services and support of the non-profit sector. But fundraising on a good day is already a challenge. And when times are tough, fundraising for a cause becomes a real paradox because money is the hardest to find when it's needed the most. Dr. Surip Mohandas is a non-profit management consultant and the founder of iFirst International, who recently wrote about the fundraising paradox. And he joins us to tell us more. Welcome to the show, Dr. Surip.
Welcome back. So you call it a paradox.
Yes.
Could you just explain to me why it's a fundraising paradox?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, there are now two areas about this fundraising paradox. The first one is about the fact that when you look at the economic climate, we're having a lot of issues. There's not enough money out there. Corporates are not willing to spend. Probably governments are not willing to give out grants at this point in time. And with that comes this issue that there's a lot of social issues. Because when people don't have much money, then you've got more social issues. When you have more social issues, the NGOs have got more work to be done. And then because they have got more work to be done, they need to raise more money. So you got one paradox.
Right.
And then you got another paradox. And that's all about the internal element, whereby a lot of non-profit organizations face a situation, should we talk to these people or should we not talk to these people? Should we actually ask money from these people or should we not? So there's an internal paradox and there's an external paradox out there.
Right.
I mean, yeah, that's a really big problem. I know some of my friends who actually work for social enterprises, and this money issue has always been a problem. Getting grants, you know, speaking to the right people, and what can these non-profits do to make their appeals for funds hit? You know, do they just put it out there? I mean, I know there's like crowdfunding sites and all that. What else do you think they can do?
Well, first I'll take a step back there. And I think the first thing we got to remember is that we have to first ask ourselves our relevance. Are the actual social enterprises or the non-profits or foundations out there actually relevant? And most cases, when you're not relevant, then it's very hard for actually to appeal for fundraising. Because people will say, well, you're not with the times. It's like Baskin Robbins and the 31 flavors, you know. Is Tutti Frutti out there today?
Yeah.
It's true.
Very well
good
said.
Point. Good point.
But you know, non-profits usually, I mean, always work for a cause, right? So I think a lot of them kind of tend to put their work before their financial kind of structure. How do you think this is detrimental?
Well, there's two elements to this. One is the fact that you want to actually do something on the ground. But there's also something about keeping yourself moving. And that's, for example, if you want to actually move from one end to another, you need money. And so that's the enabler. Really, it's not the issue in terms of being an evil. It's really the enabler. So a lot of organizations say, we need money, we need to do this. But they forget that there's a tomorrow that they need to do it as well. They're only thinking about today. For that tomorrow, you need to keep money aside. And to keep money aside means you must have some surplus to put money aside or some reserves. This is the thinking where the financial element comes into play.
Right. You want to fight for a cause, but you want to be able to sustain it. You don't want to do it today. And exactly.
I think like what's one I say, I think sustaining a non-profit is the biggest challenge. Right? And a lot of non-profits, what they do is they go get funds. They go to a big corporation, a big company, and they get funds from there, and that's it, and they're happy with that. You know, but non-profit doesn't really work that way. I mean, you got to constantly get funds. You got to constantly go out there and speak to people and do that. But so what is the danger of this when you just go to one point, get the funds in, and you just stop there, and then you try to sustain with that?
Well, the danger obviously is you're putting all your eggs in one basket, right? And by doing that, what happens is that you're not actually opening up your channels for other revenue streams. And when you don't open yourself for other revenue streams, what happens is you are actually closing yourself for tomorrow. And if that donor or that person who's giving you that money forward says, well, thank you very much, I think we're stopping here, you're left in the quandary. And so it's always important to actually open your channels out there to see. And that's what you call a fundraising mix. Where do you put your money in terms of getting the revenue streams? That's very important, very critical to today's market. What happens is most NGOs, what they do is they have a certain, maybe if they depend very highly, depending on a government grant or depending on certain big donors coming, they live on that. And when they live on that, they're actually tied down. That becomes a challenge.
So what do you suggest? What other strategies can nonprofits sort of employ to strengthen out their financial resources?
Well, one of the ways you can actually consider is now taking a step back and actually looking into what are your revenue streams currently. Are there opportunities? Like we mentioned earlier on, crowdsourcing is one of them. You can look at even at legacies. Now, the people don't even look at legacies and find it's a taboo. But actually talking to people when they say when they're bequeathed, when they actually leave the world, they would like to put some money into a charity. But that takes a lot of effort, right? And then even looking at the individuals, or you can actually look at foundations. And there are many ways you can actually look into channeling. But just depending on one will not be enough.
Do you think that, Doctor, do you think that most nonprofits are being less creative in trying to raise funds? Because the conventional way, like you mentioned earlier, was just go and speak to people and get funds in. Go get a grant and go speak to the government and you get funds in. Do you think they should be more creative, like do some events or go speak to people about it? I mean, other revenues like you mentioned.
I won't say that they're not creative. I would say that the environment is not giving them the space to be creative. And what happens is, in most cases in a non-profit organization, or whatever an organization, when you actually want money, you really have to have that space to be creative, allowed to take some risks. What is your risk appetite? Are you risk averse? How tolerant are you to actually... that space to actually be creative is generally not given. Why? Because most people, either if they're volunteers or they're working on the ground, are just too heavily burdened with the impact on the ground. They don't have time to actually look at these kind of stuff. They're hoping that someone will come and knock on the door and give money. These are the small ones. The larger ones may have a lot of resources to look at it, in which case they're much more lucky. But I won't say they're actually not creative. They are. They've got a lot of creative juices, but that space and environment to give them is not there.
Understood. Right. But you did say, especially when they tend to rely on a single large revenue, there's a higher chance of them having to struggle with financial resources. How would you suggest that these nonprofits kind of prepare for funding shortfalls?
Right, shortfalls. Now that's a management issue, really a management issue, because ultimately a shortfall happens not overnight. It happens over a period of time. So what you really need is a mix between good fundraising and good financial management. And to do that, you need some trigger points. What is it that actually triggers you to say, aha, we actually need to raise money, or aha, we actually have somewhere where money is actually getting short. Some elements of trigger points. In the medical facility, they have this code red and code blue and code yellow. Well, in the same way, you need some kind of thing to say, okay, it's code red, the sound will come out, and then you go on and you go out there and you try to get the money. Right? So that's the effort. So what is that trigger points? What are those? Well, in the financial management, they call them ratios. In the fundraising, you can actually make a ratio between your operating and expenditure, income and expenditure, and see where it is. So there are many ways to look at this.
Also, Doctor, we keep saying about fundraising. So when you go out there and you get fundraising, how do you build this long-lasting, sustainable relationship with your donor? Some people have KPIs they need to fill, right? Within the first 3 years, you need to be able to do something really impactful the next 3 years. But how do you build that long-term?
Do you have a girlfriend?
No.
Are you married?
Nope.
Well, if you want to build a relationship with anyone, there must be something that you have to have some kind of bond, right? And that's the empathy that comes in. Either you must know how they look at things, how they think about things, what do they do, how do they feel. All those elements comes in a relationship. If you don't actually already have all that in the ingredients, you will never build that donor relationship to bring more. So what actually happens is people don't realize that fundraising is a professional job. For me to get money from you, it's not about just one pocket. I got to get it from your mind. I got to get it from your heart. I got to get it from how you feel. It's a story I tell you. That way you build that relationship And that takes a bit of time. I know a story about one guy in the US. He went and raised money. He managed to get money about something like about 5 billion for a cause after spending about 5 years with a very wealthy man just doing fly fishing.
You spent 5 years doing fly fishing to get
finally
$5 million
got 5 billion.
Billion.
5 billion.
Wow.
Was it a good return on investment? Yes, it was. But he had to take the time and get it. Some people need long-term warm-up.
Invest for investments.
Yeah. And that, but you start now.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. We got a slogan: invest for investment. There we are.
You better go copyright it.
Yeah. But you know, fundraising is obviously, as you mentioned, it is so much more than just kind of taking money from people. You know, it's also about, you talked about creativity, also about finding alternative ways to kind of source income. What do you suggest these alternatives can be in terms of sourcing money for fundraising?
Well, in the textbook scenario, it's individuals.
Right.
Right. And then within individuals, there are different categories. You have the philanthropists. You have got the corporates who actually carry 2 checkbooks. One is the corporate checkbook, and then one's a personal checkbook. Right. Then you've got within the individuals the major gifts, whereas they are able to give a large sums of money, but not in a philanthropic sense. Then you've got the corporates. Then you've got basically within the corporates, you've got money from the payroll of every staff member, and also from the corporate CSR itself. So you can actually zoom in into every sector, and you can find out where you can actually get donations. But like I said, it's a relationship building. It's about doing a lot of research. It's about data gathering, understanding the donor's mind. It's a profession on its own.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Since you said that, Doctor, this is going to be really interesting. Is it possible to fundraise during an economic downturn, you know, especially like, you know, the country's not doing really well? Do you think it's possible to fundraise then?
So I'll throw that question back to you. You know why? Let's say we're going through an economic downturn.
Yeah.
And suddenly there's huge floods somewhere in the country.
Okay.
You think people are going to take money out to raise money for that? To help the victims?
I think they will.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a call to action.
Yeah.
So the point is really throwback to say, even during the toughest of times, people are ready to act, give call to action. The question is, are we doing the right messaging out there? Are we relevant to what it is now? Is there any? People will be ready.
Okay.
You'll be surprised. People are ready to let go their last ringgit.
Well, we are Malaysians.
We are Malaysians. That's right.
You know, we always do that. We care a lot for
That's
people.
Right.
You know, there's one thing there's one thing that I always had behind my mind that I always wanted to ask. What do you think it's lacking with these social non-profit organizations, right? What do you think that's lacking when they go for funding? Because there's a lot of CSR people do a lot of CSR out there. A lot of non-profit organizations are out there, you know, and they just can't seem to be getting the money out there. What do you think it's lacking from there? Is it management, or is it the way they're going to present themselves, or how do they pitch for funding? What do you think is the real problem there?
Well, the ones that are successful are generally because they've developed a relationship, they've got a good mission, they have written their proposals really well, they know how to pitch, they basically got made some impact on the ground. So people want to associate with them because they've got a good they've done some great work. The ones who generally are finding it a struggle is because they've not matched those kind of areas. Proposal writing is not an easy thing. Not many people have that skill. How do you write it? And then afterwards, building that pitch. Not everybody knows how to build. And then, of course, it comes with the passion of how you actually share your views. This becomes the challenge in most cases. And those are the fundamentals. In most cases, sometimes they go and they ask for CSR money, but they do not know how to ask or what to, you know, what is it? They don't even do the research about that company and say, what is it they're looking at? Right? Even within, let's say, they're interested in education. What area of education? You know, they're interested in environment. What area of environment? You've got to do that. And that takes a bit of time.
Yeah, for sure. You need to understand your product first. It's pretty much marketing, it's pretty much sales. You know, you need to, I totally get that. You know, but collaborative fundraising efforts here in Malaysia are still kind of starting up. How do you suggest these nonprofits can really move forward without becoming commercial?
Interesting question. So if you want them to actually move forward without being commercial, I would take it that you're saying that they're not supposed to make money out of it, in which case? Well, if they are not making, generally the issue is about making money.
Right.
But it's where does the money go to?
Right.
The money goes to the cause.
Exactly.
So you'll see some of these non-profits or social enterprises, they sell merchandise, right? T-shirts or keychains, what have you. So that's, you still have to go in that commercial sector. But the issue is, where is the money going to? It goes to the cause at the end of the day. And in the element nowadays, there's this element where there's a marriage between moving non-profits into the social enterprise. And the social enterprise trying to go into the non-profit world. There's these elements now that are changing the whole makeup and the climate of how cause-based organizations are moving, you know. And so I don't think we can actually separate commercial and the non-profit. But as long as the money goes to a cause, then everyone is clear.
Okay.
That's right.
Well,
fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Know.
It's always a pleasure speaking to you, honestly.
Well, obviously, we'll welcome you back once again. You know, it's really great having you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I think the root problem is, Swana, if they actually know how to work on fundraising and they have a really strong cause, like Doctor mentioned much earlier, about having the right proposals, meet the right people.
Appealing to people.
Yes.
That's it.
I think you'll get it pretty right.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview because I certainly did.
Yeah.
Tomorrow on VBuzz, though, expanding a startup comes with its fair share of hurdles, and that is why it's incredibly important for a business to stay nimble while growing. We chat with the executive director of Lava Protocols, Andrew Thomas, on this on tomorrow's show.
And executive director of Asturi Metal Builders, Fatia Sharif, played role model to young girls as she collaborated with girls and we speak to her about what it means to be a role model.
And remember to keep writing to us at VBuzz at astro.com.my and follow us on Instagram at VBuzz_HD.
Yeah, you got to check all of us out and then the behind the scenes, what we do, and you know, we have all these special segments that we just came up with.
Exactly.
Like V-horrors and V-gossips and stuff like that.
Sounds interesting. Right. Well, that wraps things up for tonight's show, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.